handsome Squidward is the new male beauty standard. Also, Jacob Elordi has a negative canthal tilt, so I guess it's over for him. In other news, some men are exchanging their perfectly fine teeth for veneers, others are mewing, eye pulling, getting jaw implants, undergoing dangerous height surgeries, and even hammering their faces. Are men finally being exposed to the relentless beauty standards that women have been subjected to for decades? Is TikTok at fault? What happens when we turn the male gaze on itself? Let's get into it. Looksmaxing, a movement prevalent amongst an audience of particularly teen boys and young men, has been gaining a significant amount of traction on social media in the last year. Originating from online communities frequented by a very specific demographic, the movement centers on the idea of enhancing various facial and bodily features to their maximum in the pursuit of physical beauty. These improvements can be accomplished through habit and posture changes, specific exercises, and cosmetic interventions. The allure of looksmaxing lies in its promise, a seemingly simple pathway towards achieving societal ideals of attractiveness. These ideals are perpetuated and amplified by the relentless focus on beauty standards in the media, especially on platforms like TikTok, that often foster an obsession with physical appearance. The movement thrives on the myth that attaining these standards is within reach for anyone willing to undertake the prescribed routines and modifications, with many accounts showcasing before and after transformations, feeding the illusion that the average person can metamorphose into the likeness of a celebrity by engaging in activities like chewing gum, mewing, diligent skincare routines, squinting exercises, and hitting the gym. Notoriously, looksmaxing gave rise to the notion of the canthal tilt, a concept that tends to label individuals as attractive or not based on the angle of their eyes. I'm not too sure I understand this correctly, but to my understanding, if your eyes tilt upwards, you have a positive canthal tilt, and if your eyes tilt downwards, you have a negative canthal tilt. According to looksmaxers, having the latter means that it's over for you, bro, which I find kind of ridiculous, seeing that some of the most conventionally attractive celebrities, like Anne Hathaway, Jacob Elordi, Ryan Gosling, and Sydney Sweeney, all have negative canthal tilts. Other infamous looksmaxing practices include mewing, which, if you're unaware, is a practice purposed to reshape the jawline by changing the posture of your tongue. There's also eye pulling, which is when you apparently pull your eyes upwards to make your canthal tilt more positive. Similarly, some have also taken up squint-maxing, which is basically squinting their eyes to give off the appearance that they have hunter eyes. Honestly, these methods seem harmless enough, but their effectiveness remains dubious at best. I'm no expert on the subject, but I don't think that you can actually make any significant alterations to the prominence of your jawbones or the angles of your eye shape without undergoing surgical intervention that I know of, so I wouldn't get my hopes up. Apart from mewing and eye pulling, other practices common in looksmaxing include water maxing, gym maxing, hair maxing, and skin maxing, which is exactly what it sounds like. Hydration, going to the gym, tending to your hair, and taking care of your skin, which are obviously not revolutionary concepts in the slightest. It's honestly just grooming and self-care rebranded to fit a teen boy demographic. It's kind of funny how they add the word maxing after very elementary concepts. I guess skincare, hair care, and hydration have feminine connotations to them, but adding maxing after the word makes it manly. But again, these are generally very harmless practices. However, one looksmaxing practice that is not harmless is something called bone smashing, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the idea that by exposing your face to repeated blunt trauma, by a hammer for example, it would stimulate bone growth. Now, this is not only dangerous for obvious reasons, but it's also completely untrue if you couldn't have guessed it. According to a Rolling Stone article on the subject, bone crushing actually originated as a joke on one of these incel forums, but some users apparently couldn't pick up on the satire and actually went along with it. Dr. Sanjay Trika, a cosmetic doctor, was interviewed by the publication Vice on the subject, and he said that there is no evidence whatsoever that bone smashing promotes bone growth. He explained that, and I quote, "When you traumatize an area, you might get local inflammation, and that may seem like it's getting bigger, but it's going to go down. It won't come back harder and stronger, and it can actually cause permanent damage." Height has also become a focal point in the looksmaxing realm, with some going as far as opting for painful and risky surgical procedures to gain a few extra inches. This obsession overlooks the dangers associated with going to such extreme measures, putting the patients at risk to the likes of nerve damage, muscle damage, arthritis, and even dislocation. expectations. And of course, it's your body and your money, and if at the end of the day that makes you happy, that's great. But personally, I don't really understand why you would go through such intense pain, plus the risk of long-time health consequences just to gain a few extra inches. Plus, the existence of celebrities like Tom Holland, Oscar Isaac, The Weeknd, Josh Hutcherson, Zac Efron, and Joe Jonas, who are all adored on immense scales, just goes to show that you don't need to be super tall to be considered attractive. I think by now you can notice that Looksmaxers have kind of created this mathematical equations for male attractiveness. To be an attractive man, you have a very strong jawline, high cheekbones, a positive canthal tilt, a six-pack, hunter eyes, and of course be taller than 6 foot. Not only is this so limiting and untrue, but this one-size-fits-all approach breeds such homogeny. They are all striving for the same look. This homogenization of beauty standards have been observed in women for decades, and at a much higher level too. But I think that in the last couple of years, men have begun to experience it too. And recently, with the rise of platforms such as TikTok, who promote such hyper-awareness of one's physical appearance, this focus has grown exponentially amongst young men. Another thing that you might have noticed by now is that Looksmaxers seem to be super fixated on specific features, and by doing that, they kind of overlook the concept of facial harmony. What I mean by that is that maybe your facial structure isn't naturally suited to have huge jawline and projecting cheekbones, and maybe your eye shape isn't intended to have a positive canthal tilt. This emphasis on isolated enhancements disregards the balance and the individuality that constitute facial aesthetics. And by changing these isolated features, sometimes you can create a disbalance. We've seen this with the likes of Zac Efron and Liam Payne, for example. Both had beautiful faces. Yes, they didn't have the most protruding jaws and cheekbones, but that softness worked perfectly for them. I'm not sure which procedures exactly they underwent. Maybe chin and jaw fillers or implants, maybe some buccal fat removal, I'm not sure. But I feel like it is slightly overwhelming and has kind of disbalanced their facial harmony. And don't get me wrong, like they are obviously still attractive and beautiful, and if that's what they wanted, that's great. I'm just using them as an example to highlight that you don't need to conform to all the criteria of Looksmaxing, and in fact, sometimes a person's facial appearance can be more appealing without adhering strictly to these criteria. Also, a lot of these ideals exhibit such Eurocentric bias. It's blatantly aligned with Western beauty norms, and features that deviate from that are often deemed inferior, which is obviously insane, and in such instances, it's easy to see that most of these Looksmaxing accounts are operated and frequented by a demographic of teenage boys, whose frontal lobes may or may not be fully developed yet. But I digress. Moreover, the Looksmaxers love to romanticize hegemonic masculinity. Unsurprisingly, these kinds of circles tend to idealize the concept of being an alpha male and adhering to traditional and stereotypical notions of masculinity. Condemnation of beta males, whatever that even means, is subsequent, with the dominance over both men and women being the goal. As you can imagine, not only does this emphasis on projecting hyper-masculine traits and attitudes puts down other expressions of masculinity and non-conforming gender identities, but it honestly can be really toxic and very antiquated in my opinion. It's so funny too, because all of this, it's a masculine beauty ideal constructed, promoted, and practiced by men. You know that meme that's like the expectation versus reality of a man that goes to the gym? It's obviously a bit exaggerated, but I feel like it's kind of like this with Looksmaxing too. Like it might have originated as a means to make yourself more attractive to potential partners, and that might still be one reason for it, but I also feel like it has kind of transformed into a self-contained community where those engaged are seeking each other's approvals to validate their attractiveness, with the ultimate validation manifesting itself via the form of a comment that reads, "Bro's majestic." It's kind of the male gaze of male beauty standards, if that makes sense. According to the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, male cosmetic procedures have risen by 29% between 2000 and 2018. Now, I haven't found any statistics past 2018, but I am certain that the statistics are continuing to rise significantly, especially because of the arrival of TikTok. Not only does TikTok's visual-centric content foster rapid beauty trends, but it also normalizes cosmetic enhancements. And it's kind of tricky because on one hand, I strongly believe that there are many benefits in lifting the veil of secrecy surrounding plastic surgery. And when people on TikTok or influencers influencers or celebrities or even just people in general talk openly about the work they have undergone, it does just that, and it destigmatizes it. But on the other hand, it might promote cosmetic interventions as well, which can kind of contribute to setting these unattainable beauty standards. I honestly don't think that plastic surgery is inherently good or bad, but facts are that recently men have been getting more of it than ever before, with TikTok almost serving as a kind of virtual marketplace for these procedures. And if there's one thing that is certain, it's that beauty trends are constantly shifting between contrasting ideals. This cyclical nature guarantees that what is considered attractive today might very possibly be different in a couple of years. For instance, we're all familiar with what happened in the mid to late 2010s, early 2020s, when female beauty trends were greatly influenced by the likes of the Kardashians, who kind of influenced the popularization of BBLs and lip injections. And here we are only a couple of years later, and we've already witnessed a shift in these feminine beauty ideals, with figures like Hailey Baldwin, Bella Hadid, and Won epitomizing this transformation. And yes, the new standards might be different, but they are nonetheless as inaccessible to most of us. Heck, it's theorized that even the Kardashians have underwent BBL reversals. All this to say that trends in beauty, like a pendulum, swing back and forth. And with the rise of platforms like TikTok, with its fast-paced short-form content, the rise and fall of specific beauty ideals are now faster than ever before. So yes, maybe the Giga Chad face is in vogue today for men, but there is a very strong chance that a completely contrasting beauty ideal will take its place in the near future. And we will look back at this and kind of cringe, which is why basically I think it's unwise to alter facial features to fit trends, because trends are inherently ephemeral. And since we're talking about the homogenization of male beauty standards, we have to talk about teeth. The recent trend of male celebrities getting veneers, despite already possessing attractive smiles, surpasses me. In a lot of these cases, not only are the veneers completely unnecessary, but they also sometimes lead to unnaturally uniform smiles, kind of stripping away the individual charm that made their original smiles attractive. Take Sam Claflin, for example. Like, his original smile was absolutely perfect.
Told Sam Claflin to get veneers. Why would you do this to Finnick? Come forward. Like, who did this? I just want to talk. I'm telling you guys right now, this is the new buccal fat removal, the new BBL, and I'm not okay with it. The girlies are not happy with this. No. Look at those beautiful, sharp canines. Okay? We live in a post-Twilight, Vampire Diaries, Baldur's Gate 3 world. We want the fangs. The girls demand the fangs, okay? He's still handsome, don't get me wrong. There is so much beauty in a non-perfect, asymmetrical smile. It gives character to your face. Let me de-influence you guys from getting veneers. Unless your teeth are super bad, like, please, think twice. Imagine if he got veneers and all his teeth were straight, okay?
And this trend is trickling down into the general population as well, which is fine. It's your money and it's your smile. Like, if that makes you happy, that's great. But also, the popularization of veneers kind of creates a culture where cosmetic perfection overshadows dental health. In fact, getting veneers without genuine dental concerns can actually be detrimental. It can lead to irreversible enamel loss, increased tooth sensitivity, and potential damage to the natural teeth underneath. And I've seen so many horror stories on TikTok, especially in cases where people would go get veneers abroad for a cheap price. Like, some of these cases are honestly kind of terrifying. Anyhow, I personally think that unique smiles are beautiful and that not everyone is meant to have the same big white uniform teeth in their mouth. And I'm obviously not a dentist, but I feel like maybe veneers are kind of beginning to seem like an alternative to orthodontics, which maybe it shouldn't be. Anything that places such a big emphasis on looks is automatically at risk of breeding body dysmorphia and self-esteem issues. And I think that this can absolutely be the case for looksmaxxing. We see these teenagers whose faces haven't even fully developed yet, expressing this obsessive self-criticism and dissatisfaction over their appearance. This relentless pursuit of the perfect face and the perfect body can really take a toll on someone's mental health, and not only exacerbate insecurities, but also perpetuate unrealistic expectations and standards. And since most people in these spheres are adolescents and youths who are influenced into tying their sense of self-worth to these metrics, who knows what long-lasting psychological ramifications it may cause on their self-esteem and body image, which again, by itself, looksmaxxing doesn't inherently pose a significant issue. I mean, self-care and attending to one's appearance is generally pretty harmless and even should be encouraged, except if you're hammering your face, obviously. However, the rhetoric and the mindset prevalent amongst those that are frequenting these online spheres is what arises concern in my opinion. The pervasive belief system that prioritizes looks above all else kind of fosters a culture where achieving these societal beauty ideals becomes the primary goal, overshadowing personality, talent, intelligence, and personal growth. Gen Z are navigating a culture that is hyper-fixated on physical appearance. And with the influence of platforms like TikTok, which intensifies the emphasis on beauty, it's understandable that young people will try and seek validation and acceptance by altering their appearance. Body standards in looksmaxxing and on TikTok as a whole really fixate on a very exclusionary kind of beauty that promotes a monolithic view of attractiveness. And at the end of the day, those that are delving into looksmaxxing, like most of us, likely struggle with some insecurities. Which is why, as always, I think it's important to keep being a critical thinker. And if you see some of these more toxic looksmaxxing videos on your TikTok feed or anything, just consciously reject the message and recognize that the creator of the video is most likely struggling with insecurities, that their frontal lobe may or may not be fully developed, and that their thoughts are not necessarily accurate. And while we're at it, let's try and consciously fight against this homogenization of beauty standards, and remember that contrary to what looksmaxxing preaches, beauty is so diverse. And if you ask me, I think that uniqueness and kindness will always be beautiful. Well, this is it for today's video. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really hope you enjoyed, and please let me know all your thoughts on this in the comments. I'd love to read them. And if you'd like to like the video and maybe subscribe, that would be super appreciated. But anyways, thank you again, and we'll maybe see each other next time. Bye!